With a population of more than 130 million, Mexico is one of the world's leading agricultural powers and the most important supplier of fresh produce to the U.S. market. Every year, the country exports nearly $40 billion worth of agricultural products, sending millions of tons of tomatoes, avocados, strawberries, and leafy greens across the border just days after harvest. But behind this success lies a paradox. Nearly 70% of Mexico's freshwater resources are concentrated in the south, while its largest export-oriented farming regions are located in the arid north and central areas, where drought, groundwater depletion, and growing climate pressures are becoming increasingly severe. So how has Mexico managed to build an agricultural export machine worth tens of billions of dollars each year and become an indispensable link in North America's food supply chain? Today, join Agriculture Insight as we explore Mexican agriculture, where water, geography, trade, and geopolitics come together to power one of the most important food production systems in the world. Known as the green gold of Mexican agriculture, limes are small fruits about the size of a fist, sharper in acidity than lemons, yet remarkably heat-tolerant and well-adapted to dry climates. From tacos and seafood to tequila and cocktails, 95% of Mexico's limes cross the border every year to serve the U.S. market, far surpassing the output of domestic states such as California or Florida. The journey begins in famous growing regions such as Veracruz, which produces most of Mexico's seedless Persian limes with thick, attractive skins, and the valleys of Michoacán, home to a smaller seeded lime that is exceptionally juicy and intensely aromatic. Although agriculture is becoming increasingly modern, Mexican limes are still harvested mainly by hand. Farmers move through the dense tree canopies under intense heat, picking each fruit one by one, placing them into cloth bags worn across the chest, then quickly transferring them onto trucks. Even a small scratch on the peel can cause the fruit to rot or mold quickly during its journey of thousands of kilometers to the United States. Still, a skilled worker can harvest nearly 1 ton of limes per day, a job that demands enormous endurance in temperatures that often exceed 35 to 40 degrees Celsius. As soon as they arrive at the factory, tons of limes immediately enter a modern processing line. They are washed with high-pressure spray systems and sanitizing water tanks, then dried and coated with a thin layer of wax to preserve freshness throughout transportation. Next, laser scanners capture and analyze the surface of each fruit, automatically sorting them by size down to the millimeter, while removing any limes with bruises or scratches before they are packed into export cartons. Mexico's growing regions harvest almost in rotation throughout the year to keep supply from running short. But because the supply chain depends so heavily on Mexico, it can sometimes become extremely fragile. For example, when drought, crop disease, and cartel extortion targeting farms and transport trucks disrupted supply, lime prices in the United States once surged by nearly 300%, forcing many restaurants to reduce portions, raise prices for cocktails, tacos, and seafood, and even temporarily replace fresh limes with bottled lime juice to cut costs. Generating more than $3 billion each year, Mexican avocados now almost completely dominate the U.S. market, with around 80 to 90% of the avocados consumed by Americans imported from Mexico. However, for more than a decade, the avocado industry has also been frequently targeted by criminal groups, which have used violence, pressure, and control to exploit the sector. To understand how this green gold industry operates, let's travel to Michoacán, a mountainous region where cool temperatures, fertile volcanic soils, and elevations reaching 2,500 meters create ideal conditions for Hass avocados with dense, creamy flesh, low fiber content, and a richer, nuttier flavor than many other avocado varieties. The harvest begins early in the morning. On steep mountain slopes, farmers use long picking poles fitted with cutting blades and mesh bags to harvest each avocado entirely by hand. Even a small scratch or minor impact can reduce an avocado's export value. As a result, Every fruit must be lowered with extreme care rather than harvested through tree shaking or large-scale mechanized methods. Unlike most other fruits, avocados do not ripen on the tree. They are picked while still firm, allowing them to withstand the journey to the United States and reach supermarket shelves in peak condition just a few days later. All the avocados are gathered at collection points near the growing areas, then quickly transported by specialized trucks to sorting and packing facilities to preserve freshness before export. At the factory, the avocados are washed to remove soil and tree sap, then pass through modern laser scanning systems to check their size, color, and skin quality before being packed into refrigerated containers for export. However, few people realize that behind this billion-dollar industry lies enormous environmental pressure. A single avocado can require more than 200 liters of water to fully develop, while many pine forests in Mexico have been cleared to expand avocado plantations. If Mexico pauses exports for just a few days, avocado prices in U.S. supermarkets can rise almost immediately. But surprisingly, the U.S. government once banned Mexican avocados for nearly 80 years over pest concerns, leaving consumers with only seasonal domestic avocados from California at high prices, instead of the year-round abundance now found on every table, from guacamole to salads. Leaving the avocado groves behind, Mexico's agricultural machine now takes us to the capital of tequila, the birthplace of one of the fastest-growing spirits by revenue in the world. In the state of Jalisco, blue agave plants grow in dry volcanic soils, spending nearly a decade sending their roots deep into the earth before becoming a luxury symbol on party tables across the United States. Unlike Western spirits made from grains that can be harvested after only a few months, an agave plant needs 7 to 10 years to accumulate enough natural sugar in its core. This long waiting period turns harvesting into a high-risk, long-term calculation, where the work is still done entirely by hand by jimadores, skilled agave harvesters whose techniques are passed down through generations. Under the harsh heat of Jalisco, they use a razor-sharp flat shovel called a koa to cut away hundreds of spiky leaves, revealing the unique core, weighing from 40 to more than 100 kilograms and looking like a giant pineapple. With agave, the moment the core is released is also when a high-speed logistics chain begins. The piñas are immediately transported to the factory, split in half, and placed in brick ovens for 24 to 48 hours to convert starches into sugars before being pressed for juice and distilled. Americans now consume more than 70% of Mexico's total tequila exports, turning this fashionable drink into a billion-dollar commercial goldmine each year, a geographical monopoly that no other country can copy, because legally recognized tequila can only be produced in designated regions of Mexico. However, the boom of Hollywood-backed brands such as Casamigos and Teremana is pushing the region's volcanic land and scarce water resources into an alarming state, turning every bottle exported to the United States into a serious trade-off in natural resources. Every November, the state of Sinaloa enters its off-season pepper harvest, supplying export markets from its vast coastal plains. Thanks to its warm, frost-free coastal climate combined with modern greenhouse technology, Mexico is home to more than 60 native pepper varieties and commands roughly 70% of the entire U.S. imported pepper market. Across these expansive fields, pepper harvesting is carried out entirely by hand by tens of thousands of seasonal workers. Moving continuously along the rows, they quickly pick peppers that meet the required size standards and toss them into plastic baskets strapped to their hips under hot and humid conditions. The greatest challenge of this work is not only the outdoor heat, but also the constant exposure to the spicy oils released from the stems and fruit, which workers come into direct contact with for hours at a time. After leaving the orchards, peppers begin a remarkable transformation into a wide range of products. They are strung together in clusters and hung under the sun to dry, creating the iconic red pepper garlands often seen across Mexico. Once dried, they become an essential ingredient in traditional sauces, stews, and seasonings. One of the most famous smoked peppers is chipotle. Fully ripened red jalapenos are slowly smoked over wood until they become dry and infused with a rich, smoky aroma. The finished product delivers deep heat and a distinctive flavor, making it a popular ingredient in sauces, grilled meats, and a wide variety of Mexican dishes. Known as nopal for its pads and tuna for its fruit by indigenous communities, the prickly pear cactus thrives without expensive irrigation systems, transforming some of the driest lands in Puebla and Hidalgo into productive green farms that can be harvested year-round. On rocky slopes and arid terrain, farmers wear thick leather boots and use specialized knives mounted on long poles to cut young nopal pads or carefully harvest ripe tuna fruits. The challenge is not only avoiding the large, razor-sharp spines, but also the countless tiny hair-like glochids that can become airborne in the wind and cause intense irritation if they come into contact with the eyes or skin. After being harvested, prickly pears must go through an extremely careful manual preparation process, using rough brushes or specialized centrifugal machines to completely smooth away the outer layer of spines before they are packed into crates. Today, this spiny fruit is no longer limited to Latino communities. It has become a health food trend thanks to its high fiber content and strong potential for blood sugar control. Americans import more than 50,000 tons of prickly pears each year to make juice, dietary supplements, or serve them directly in high-end restaurant chains as a resource-saving superfood, a profitable solution in an era of worsening water scarcity. While Mexican produce turns the border into a perfect money-printing machine, the country's livestock industry has chosen a different path. Instead of focusing on exporting commercial cuts of meat, it has positioned itself as a raw material supplier for major partner ranches. Beef cattle are a strategic commodity, generating $2 to $3 billion a year through the export of live cattle to the United States for fattening and slaughter. This journey begins on the dry grasslands near the border. Here, heat-tolerant and disease-resistant cattle such as Brahman and Angus crossbreeds are raised on open pasture until they reach an ideal weight of around 150 to 200 kilograms. However, the biggest bottleneck in this entire logistics chain lies at the border inspection stations of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. If even one animal is found with parasitic ticks or signs of foot-and-mouth disease, the entire shipment of hundreds of cattle can be immediately denied entry, putting Mexican ranchers at serious risk of heavy losses. After crossing the border, Mexican cattle are loaded onto specialized semi-trailers and transported directly to massive feedlots in Texas or Kansas. There they are fed with America's own cheap yellow corn to gain weight rapidly before entering industrial slaughter lines. The paradox is that, after being processed into premium steaks, a large portion of this beef is shipped back across the border and sold to high-end supermarkets and restaurants in Mexico. As a result, this logistics cycle creates an ironic economic loop, where some Mexican consumers end up buying their own country's beef under the label of imported American beef, at prices 3 to 5 times higher than its original value. West Africa, the cocoa capital of the world, producing more than 70% of the global cocoa supply each year, sustaining a chocolate industry worth over $100 billion, and serving as an irreplaceable backbone behind giant chocolate empires like Mars, Nestlé, Ferrero, and Hershey's. Here, cocoa season is not simply about harvesting, but a race against time, where even a small mistake can affect the next harvest. Across the vast plantations of Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana, farmers almost completely avoid using machinery. Instead, they rely on hooked knives and long-handled sickles to cut each cocoa pod by hand. Every cut must be precise enough to separate the pod from the trunk without damaging the flower cushion, the part of the tree where future pods will continue to grow. A single wrong cut can leave an entire branch unable to bear fruit for many seasons afterward. But the true value lies deep inside that rough, textured shell. Cocoa beans coated in a white, sticky pulp with a lightly sweet, tangy flavor, carrying hints of mango, pineapple, and tropical passion fruit. After being removed from the pods, the cocoa beans are gathered into large piles and covered with banana leaves or burlap sacks to trigger fermentation, a process often considered the key to awakening the soul of chocolate. Over the next 5 to 7 days, microorganisms become highly active, raising the temperature of the bean mass to around 50 degrees Celsius and gradually transforming the harsh bitterness into the distinctive flavor foundation of chocolate. Once this process is complete, the beans do not leave immediately, but are instead dried under the sun as a final flavor-locking step, reducing moisture to a safe level and stabilizing all the chemical changes that have just taken place. Only after the moisture is properly controlled and the flavor has stabilized through fermentation are the cocoa beans considered ready to enter the industrial stage. At the very bottom of the more than $100 billion chocolate industry, many cocoa farmers in Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana earn only around 1 to 2 a day under the 35 degrees Celsius heat of the equatorial climate, while a premium chocolate bar can sell for $15 to $25. That gap exposes one of the greatest contradictions in the global cocoa industry. The people producing its most important raw material receive less than 6% of the money paid by the final consumer. Many people still think of Japan as the world's tea empire because of its famous tea ceremonies, but in reality, the country accounts for only around 2 to 3% of global tea production. The true dominant force is Kenya, the African nation that leads global black tea exports and supplies around 70 to 80% of the raw material used in the world's tea bag industry, appearing in products from major brands such as Lipton, Twinings, and PG Tips. Unlike the tea plantations in Japan, where modern harvesting machines move in straight lines between almost perfectly trimmed rows, many tea-growing regions in Kenya still rely heavily on manual labor. Here, workers remain loyal to the 2 leaves and a bud harvesting method, a standard considered the soul of high-quality black tea. To harvest tea, workers must use their fingertips to precisely pluck the correct leaves, twist their wrists almost instinctively, then quickly drop them into baskets carried on their backs in a rhythm so steady it feels almost mechanical. A skilled tea picker can harvest up to 30 to 50 kilograms of fresh leaves per day, and as soon as the baskets are filled, they are immediately transported to collection points. Alongside fully manual harvesting methods, many farms in Kenya have now widely adopted compact handheld tea harvesting machines, allowing farmers to harvest around 3 times faster. Only slightly larger than a handheld grass trimmer, this device uses high-speed vibrating blades combined with a front-mounted leaf collection bag, and under continuous operation can harvest up to 150 to 200 kilograms of fresh tea leaves per hour. Although both come from the same tea plant species, Camellia sinensis, differences in climate and processing methods have driven Japanese tea and Kenyan tea in 2 almost completely opposite directions. While Japan focuses on small leaf green teas with a delicate umami flavor, Kenya concentrates on high-tannin, strong-flavored, high-yield tea varieties to become one of the main suppliers behind the global mass-market black tea industry. But the journey of Kenyan tea does not end on the mist-covered hillsides. The moment the leaves arrive at the factory, they immediately enter a race against time, inside industrial processing lines. First, the tea leaves are spread across massive withering troughs for around 8 to 12 hours to reduce moisture before being sent through CTC systems that crush, tear, and curl them into small tea particles used for mass-market black tea production. For orthodox whole-leaf teas, The leaves are instead laid out on large trays to oxidize slowly while preserving most of their natural structure. Finally, everything is dried at high temperatures to lower the moisture content to just around 2 to 3%, locking in flavor and extending shelf life for export shipments traveling around the world. What is especially striking is that despite supplying much of the raw material for the global tea bag industry, many farmers in Kenya still sell their tea leaves at relatively low prices. Meanwhile, after being blended, packaged, and sold under international brands, those same tea leaves can increase in value by 10 to 20 times on supermarket shelves worldwide. As one of the most drought-resistant staple crops on the planet, sorghum has become almost a survival switch for African agriculture, feeding more than 500 million people and turning every harsh, dry season into a period of renewal for life itself. Today, in large-scale production regions such as South Africa, Sudan, and Ethiopia, the picture is changing as combine harvesters, most of them imported from the United States, begin replacing manual labor. These massive machines operate like mobile factories across the fields. As they move into the sorghum crop, the cutting headers lower simultaneously to gather the upright stalks. Inside the machine, rotating drums and screening systems separate the grain from the heads within seconds, achieving efficiencies of around 5 to 10 tons of grain per hour while removing straw and impurities. The cleaned grain is then transferred into onboard storage tanks, while the stalks are discharged behind the machine in long rows across the field. Immediately after harvest, the sorghum is transported to processing facilities for screening, impurity removal, and industrial grading before becoming raw material for livestock feed and food products consumed around the world. Known as the soft gold of Africa, shea nuts are not only a beauty ingredient, but also the foundation of an economy that has supported generations, standing behind a global value chain worth more than $2 billion each year. Unlike oil palm, which is cultivated and harvested through highly industrialized systems, shea operates under a completely different logic. The trees take 15 to 20 years to produce their first fruit, reach peak productivity only after several decades, and can live for up to 200 to 300 years, making each tree a true multi-generational investment. More than 90% of the world's shea supply comes from naturally growing trees, creating one of the rare agricultural systems that requires almost no planting, no land ownership, and no fully controllable harvest cycle. People do not pick the fruit from the trees. They can only wait. And once the ripe fruits fall to the ground, they must quickly gather them under the scorching heat, because even a delay of a few hours can cause the entire harvest to spoil. From that moment on, a strict processing chain begins. The nuts are washed and vigorously rubbed inside large basins to remove the sticky pulp, then spread out under the sun for 2 to 3 days to dry and stabilize the oil inside. Once the proper dryness is reached, the nuts are cracked open to remove their rock-hard shells, revealing the fatty kernels, which are then roasted over high heat to activate the oils and prepare them for the extraction stage that follows. The ground kernel paste is then mixed with water, kneaded, and continuously stirred until it transforms from a heavy mass into a smooth, glossy mixture. At this stage, the oil gradually separates from the residue. Hot water is added and stirred again so the oil can gather and rise to the surface, where it is skimmed off and reheated to remove impurities before cooling into a rich golden butter. The same butter found in everything from chocolate to global cosmetic brands such as L'Oreal, Nivea, and The Body Shop. Today, shea is often called the women's gold of Africa, as more than 16 million African women directly operate almost the entire value chain, an industry considered overwhelmingly female-dominated, where women hold a near-total presence from the very first stage to the final product. Considered the survival bank of Africa, More than 430 million goats are herded across the continent's dry semi-desert regions each year, forming a major economic sector worth over $95 billion for the entire continent. Along the edge of the Sahel Desert, where water is almost non-existent, goats survive in ways that would force many other animals to give up. They can go for days without drinking water, absorbing moisture directly from leaves, morning dew, and succulent plants. But their adaptability does not stop there. They can feed on dry branches and tree bark, and in parts of North Africa, goats even climb argan trees, reaching heights of 8 to 10 meters, to reach the small fruits above, creating a scene that looks almost like a glitch in nature, but is actually a perfectly evolved survival instinct. In many communities, each goat is far more than just livestock. It functions as living cash. When food is needed, goats can be sold, and during hardship, they can be traded, turning entire herds into a real financial system. Once they reach around 25 to 40 kilograms, most goats in Africa are sent to processing facilities, where they go through grading, butchering, chilling, and packaging before appearing in local markets or entering export chains bound for the Middle East and Europe. With horns stretching up to 2.5 meters long like giant biological antennas, Ankole cattle are not only ranked among the largest horned animals on Earth, but have also become an iconic symbol of Africa, deeply tied to both economic and cultural traditions. Biologically, Ankole Watusi cattle possess a tall, powerful build and a naturally aggressive temperament, standing up to 1.7 meters tall and weighing more than 700 kilograms. Despite their lean and elegant appearance, their muscles are extremely dense and resilient, perfectly adapted to the harsh, dry heat of East Africa. But what truly makes Ankole cattle remarkable is not just their appearance, but their ability to survive in environments where many other livestock breeds struggle to adapt. The cattle are allowed to roam freely across vast grasslands, grazing on their own and moving according to water sources under the guidance of herders. In many semi-arid regions of East Africa, where rivers and streams nearly disappear throughout the dry season, farmers often dig compacted earth reservoirs several meters wide and around 1 to 2 meters deep to maintain water supplies for their livestock. The reservoir walls are tightly packed with clay to reduce water seepage, while rainwater from the wet season or water pumped from wells is directed into them and stored for the weeks ahead. During the dry season, these simple reservoirs become almost like survival stations for entire herds of longhorned cattle, as each adult animal may require dozens of liters of water per day under the 30°C+ heat of the African savanna. In many cases, finding water and maintaining these reservoirs becomes just as important as finding grazing land itself. To protect the cattle from flies, mosquitoes, and parasitic ticks, dried cow dung is burned to create smoke, a traditional method used to reduce heat stress and help protect the herd from disease in tropical climates. Beyond their enormous horns, Ankole Watusi cattle are also known for producing rich, energy-dense milk, even though the yield is only around 1–2 liters per day. A few weeks after calving, milking usually takes place in the early morning or late afternoon when temperatures become cooler. One fascinating detail is that the milk is not poured directly into containers after milking. Instead, it undergoes a smoking process using fragrant wood and herbs inside handmade wooden gourds, giving the milk its distinctive smoky aroma. For many East African communities, Ankole herds are so valuable that their greatest worth does not lie in meat production, but in their ability to sustain entire families through long periods of drought. With a lifespan of more than 1,000 years and recognized as one of the largest trees on Earth, the baobab not only captures global attention because of its enormous size, but also because of its remarkable economic value, generating more than $1 billion annually for Africa. Africans often call it the upside-down tree, because its giant branches resemble roots stretching into the sky. But what truly makes the baobab extraordinary is not its appearance, but the way it survives. A single tree can grow taller than 15 meters, become hollow enough for dozens of people to stand inside, and most importantly, store up to 120,000 liters of water, essentially functioning as a massive reservoir in the middle of the desert. Many people in the West, especially in the United States, think of baobab as simply a strange desert tree, but in reality, its fruit is considered one of nature's nutrient-rich superfoods. During harvest season, people once had to climb trunks rising dozens of meters high to collect the fruit, an extremely dangerous task. Today, most harvesters simply wait for the fully dried fruits to fall naturally to the ground. Mature fruits usually have hard shells, a grayish-brown color, and are completely dry. Harvesters walk around the base of the tree, gathering only intact fruits without cracks, then sorting them immediately to avoid mixing them with damp or spoiled ones. Because the entire harvesting process depends on the fruit falling naturally, protecting the tree itself becomes critically important. Many trees are wrapped with steel mesh around the trunk to protect them from elephants, rhinos, and external damage, because losing even part of the bark can seriously injure the tree and directly affect future harvests. After collection, the baobab fruits are cracked open to remove the dry pulp inside, which is then divided into two processing paths. The pulp is finely ground into powder for food products, while the seeds are pressed for oil used in the global beauty industry. From the 3 tiny red stigmas hidden deep inside each purple flower, Iranians have created the world's most expensive spice, saffron. With prices typically ranging from several thousand to nearly $10,000 per kilogram, higher even than vanilla, Iran now controls nearly 90% of the global saffron supply. The heart of this industry lies in Khorasan Razavi province, in northeastern Iran, a semi-arid plateau where scorching dry summers meet cold winters and extremely low rainfall. Yet it is precisely this harsh environment that provides ideal conditions for saffron, a delicate crop grown from bulbs buried deep beneath the soil, highly sensitive to excess water, and blooming for only a few brief weeks in autumn. The saffron harvest lasts only about 6 weeks each year. During this brief window, farmers begin their work at dawn and finish before noon, when the intense sunlight causes the flowers to wilt quickly and the precious flavor compounds inside begin to deteriorate. All saffron is harvested entirely by hand. Each flower is carefully plucked from its stem and placed into breathable baskets rather than sealed bags, because even slight compression or heat buildup can almost immediately reduce its quality. Despite generating enormous export value, the workforce behind this delicate process, mostly women in Iran's rural communities, often earns no more than $5 a day for work that demands near absolute patience and precision. After harvesting, the delicate purple flowers are quickly transported to processing facilities to prevent bruising. There, the flowers are spread out in dry, well-ventilated spaces away from direct sunlight to preserve their quality before the most critical stage begins: stigma separation. Each flower is opened by hand, revealing 3 deep red stigmas, the only part kept for saffron production. This seemingly simple task is extremely labor-intensive. A skilled worker can separate about 600 stigmas per hour, meaning it takes roughly 40 hours of meticulous labor to produce just 1 kilogram of high-quality saffron. To create that amount, around 150,000 flowers must be harvested, a staggering raw material ratio that has earned saffron the nickname red gold. The red stigmas are then gently dried at low temperatures, reducing their moisture by up to 80% while preserving their color and distinctive aroma. After drying, the saffron shrinks into thin, dark red threads, delicate as silk, the final product that is packaged and exported to global markets. Beyond its labor-intensive production and extremely limited supply, Saffron is also sought after in global cuisine and traditional medicine for benefits such as improving mood, providing powerful antioxidants for heart health, and supporting better sleep. It is often used to give a golden color and distinctive aroma to premium rice dishes, desserts, and drinks. When tasted, saffron has a slightly bitter note but leaves a warm, subtly sweet fragrance. After saffron, Iran possesses another strategic agricultural weapon worth more than $1.5 billion each year: pistachios, the biggest rival to California almonds on the global market. The star of this industry is the Akbari variety, an exceptionally long pistachio with a distinctive pink-purple shell, widely grown in Kerman province. Even on harsh saline soils, pistachio trees thrive thanks to their strong drought tolerance. However, the crop follows an alternate bearing cycle. After a heavy harvest one year, yields naturally decline the next as the trees recover, creating an unpredictable supply rhythm for global markets. The story of Iranian pistachio quality begins with the meticulous art of hand harvesting in late summer. Instead of relying on large-scale industrial shaking machines like those commonly used in the United States, Iranian farmers continue to favor traditional methods, hand-picking the nuts or gently striking the branches with wooden sticks to protect the trees for the next season. Large sheets are carefully spread beneath the trees to catch the falling nuts, ensuring they never touch the ground. This helps keep the inner shells clean and white while preventing the kernels from contamination or damage. A skilled worker can harvest 40 to 50 kilograms of pistachios per day, and during peak season, tens of thousands of laborers converge on the pistachio orchards of Kerman province. Once the pistachios leave the orchards, they must be transported to processing facilities on the very same day to begin post-harvest treatment. While harvesting remains deeply traditional, Iran's processing stage represents a technological leap forward. Inside the factories, each batch is dehulled, cleaned, and sent through rigorous sorting lines equipped with optical sensors. For premium varieties such as Akbari, workers still perform additional manual inspections to ensure perfect uniformity before the nuts are packaged for export. Ironically, the harsh desert soils play a crucial role in the flavor of Iranian pistachios. The stressful growing conditions concentrate natural oils within the kernels, allowing them to withstand roasting temperatures above 180 degrees while retaining their rich taste and distinctive aroma. This unique quality has made Iranian pistachios highly prized among confectionery and gourmet food producers, even though the United States now produces nearly twice as many pistachios overall. If saffron and pistachios symbolize Iran's plains and deserts, then honey, the treasure of its towering mountain ranges, has evolved beyond a simple nourishing food to become a luxury functional product, even used as a natural substitute for antibiotics in traditional Persian medicine. With an annual output of around 80,000 tons, Iran is now the third largest honey producer in the world. Yet what truly surprises gourmet food enthusiasts in the United States is not the volume, but the near-perfect purity of the organic honey harvested from Iran's remote highlands. The biggest difference lies in Iran's nomadic beekeeping tradition. Unlike industrial apiaries in the United States, where bees often remain in fixed locations and may be supplemented with sugar feed to maintain yields, Iranian beekeepers undertake seasonal migrations across the Zagros and Alborz mountain ranges. They move thousands of hives throughout the year, following waves of blooming flowers, from wild grasses on open steppes to rare medicinal herbs growing along high mountain slopes. About a month after the bees complete their nectar-gathering cycle during the flowering season, the honey harvest finally begins, and it still follows traditional methods designed to preserve maximum nutrients. Instead of heating the honey for faster packaging, a process that destroys delicate enzymes and vitamins, Iranian honey is extracted using cold centrifugal spinning at room temperature. This technique preserves the full characteristics of raw honey, retaining pollen and natural antioxidant compounds. One of the most prized varieties is cedar honey, produced from the blossoms of the wild cedar tree, and often referred to as the Manuka of the Middle East, because of its strong antibacterial properties. While Western markets are increasingly seeking organic products, Iranian honey has long met this standard naturally, as bees in these remote regions rarely come into contact with pesticides or chemical agriculture. For premium batches of cedar honey, international prices can range from $80 to over $200 per kilogram, making it one of the most valuable honey varieties in the Middle East. From the high mountains, we descend to the lush southern oases, where Iran cultivates one of the desert's most important crops, the date palm. With an annual production of more than 1 million tons, Iran is now the largest rival to Egypt in the global supply race, accounting for roughly 15% of the world's date production. From August to October each year, the harvest becomes a true test of patience and precision. Because dates do not ripen uniformly on the same cluster, workers must climb trees that can reach tens of meters high multiple times, picking only the fruits that have reached perfect ripeness. This careful method preserves the delicate skin of the fruit at the moment when it is at its most juicy and flavorful. Under favorable conditions, a skilled worker can harvest around 100 to 150 kilograms of fresh dates per day. Yet the job is far from easy. Each year, dozens of accidents are reported, from falls while climbing the tall palms to heat exhaustion under desert temperatures that can reach 45 degrees. After the harvesting process is completed, all dates are transported to processing and packaging facilities. There, modern processing lines quickly clean, sort, and inspect the fruits for quality. The dates are washed, lightly dried, and then graded by size and ripeness before being packaged. Thanks to advanced machinery and strict quality control systems, the final products meet high hygiene standards, maintain their freshness, and are ready to be exported to markets around the world. Without the lush green pastures of the Netherlands or the vast ranching systems of Australia, Iran still ranks among the top 4 countries in the world with the largest sheep population. Despite its harsh terrain, the livestock sector here operates largely through ancient nomadic herding traditions, with more than 50 million sheep supplying the essential raw material for the multi-billion-dollar Persian carpet industry. On rocky mountain slopes, Iran's nomadic sheep live alongside their herders in temporary camps at elevations of up to 3,000 meters. To sustain the flocks in such water-scarce environments, herders build simple trough systems that channel water from small mountain springs, ensuring the animals maintain stable digestion and rumination. Each year around May, when the plains begin to scorch under intense heat, the flocks migrate upward into the mountains in search of cooler climates. On barren slopes where grass is scarce, they survive by feeding on drought-resistant plants such as thorny shrubs, wild herbs, and sparse dry grasses growing between rocks, while relying on the few underground water seepages scattered across the rugged terrain. It is precisely this diet, rich in essential oils from wild mountain plants, combined with constant movement across steep slopes, that produces a distinctly different kind of lamb. The meat is leaner, firmer, and far more flavorful than lamb raised on industrial grain feed. Beyond meat, sheep milk in Iran is still hand-milked directly at mountain camps. With its exceptionally high levels of protein and fat, this milk forms the foundation of the famous Legvan cheese, a long-standing delicacy prized across the Middle East. The use of sheep does not stop at food. Wool harvesting here remains entirely manual. Instead of electric clippers, which are faster but can damage the natural structure of the fibers, nomadic herders use large hand-forged steel shears to control the precise length of each fleece. From this wool comes the ultra-fine Kirk fiber, the essential material behind Persian carpets that can sell for tens of thousands of dollars in luxury markets such as New York and California. Today, sheep have effectively become a form of mobile bank for many rural households in Iran. Within just a few years, the value of a single sheep has increased 2 to 3 times, turning livestock into a crucial financial buffer against natural disasters, inflation, and the unpredictable economic pressures the country now faces. You might not know this, but right in the heart of land, once seething with lava and ash, now lie hills blanketed with hundreds of hectares of lush green vineyards. On Mount Etna in Italy, where volcanic eruptions once swallowed entire valleys, people still resiliently cultivate grapes, producing over 15,000 tons each year, with an estimated value exceeding 120 million USD. Without the need for modern machinery, they rely on stones, ash, and skilled hands to build dry stone walls to hold the soil, dig deep holes, mix organic fertilizer with volcanic ash, and carefully plant each vine. At altitudes of 400 to 800 meters above sea level, the grapevines cling tightly to the basalt ash soil, a natural black gold that retains moisture, drains well, and nourishes deep roots. Thanks to the brilliant southwestern sunlight during the day and the temperature differences at night, each grape cluster ripens slowly, developing a rich flavor with a perfect balance of sweetness and acidity. After 3 years of nurturing, when the first clusters swell with early morning dew, the harvest begins. Grapes are picked at dawn, while dew still clings to each bunch, preserving freshness and natural aroma. Harvesters use specialized scissors to gently cut each cluster at the stem, ensuring the skins remain unblemished. Once baskets are full, they are loaded onto the backs of horses or donkeys to be carried to the edge of the fields, because on these steep slopes trucks cannot reach. The freshly picked grapes are then transported to the winery. Here, the grapes are washed in cold water, pressed hydraulically, naturally fermented, and aged in oak barrels, transforming into Etna Dock wine, priced up to 20 times higher than ordinary wines. From volcanic ash, the people of Etna have created a nectar that the world raises a glass to, a testament that even in places once ravaged by destruction, life and enduring beauty can emerge. Farewell to Etna and its vineyards grown on volcanic soil. Let's explore one of the cold region's most extraordinary delicacies, frozen apples, which are 3 times sweeter and 10 times more expensive than regular ones. Instead of harvesting on schedule, farmers in Aomori, Japan, leave the apples hanging on the trees until December. There, the natural snow blanket acts as a cold coat, causing the water inside the fruit to crystallize while concentrating its sugars and aroma. After enduring several weeks of sub-zero temperatures, the apples turn a deep crimson, becoming intensely sweet and fragrant, a flavor only the harshness of winter can create. Meanwhile, in South Korea and Canada, frozen apples are produced using an artificial snow aging method. Apples are harvested at the proper time, then buried under a half-meter layer of snow for nearly 2 months. Before being covered, hundreds of crates of apples are wrapped in plastic sheets, neatly stacked in rows, and topped with a layer of dry leaves to retain moisture and insulate them. A key step that keeps the fruit from freezing solid, allowing it to soft freeze naturally. Finally, the apples are completely covered with snow, and by February, when temperatures stabilize, the crates are opened to reveal apples at the peak of sweetness and aroma. Though the annual yield is only a few thousand tons, these snow-aged apples have become a high-value agricultural product, a testament to how humans can turn nature's harshness into something uniquely rewarding. As a key product in the organic food industry, the demand for kale has surged in recent years, fueled by the global wave of healthy eating and green living. In the Netherlands, the capital of high-tech agriculture in Europe, where endless fields of vegetables stretch to the horizon, ploger kale harvesters have become the silent heroes of the season. With an impressive capacity of up to 15 tons of kale per hour, these machines can cut, collect, clean, and load the leaves into storage bins in a single pass. At the front, a dual-blade cutting system glides close to the ground, gently separating leaves from stems without bruising them. A central conveyor belt immediately lifts the kale upward, passing it through an air-blowing system that removes soil and debris before transferring it straight into the rear storage compartment, all operated automatically with near-perfect precision. Thanks to mechanization, harvesting time has been reduced by up to 80%, and productivity has multiplied compared to manual labor. Each year, the Netherlands alone produces hundreds of thousands of tons of kale, supplying both the European market and the global organic vegetable industry.